My parents didn't notice I moved out for 2 years and erased me from the family. When my dad called demanding answers, my response left him speechless. My name's Derek. I'm the middle child, which might as well be code for optional. I had an older sister named Lena, the golden girl who could do no wrong, and a younger brother, Aaron, who got away with everything because he was just a kid. Me, I was the one who figured things out on my own. No one noticed when I stopped asking for help. When I was a kid, I used to think if I got straight A's, they'd pay attention. If I kept my room spotless or helped out without being asked, someone might say, "Thanks," or "We're proud of you," but it never happened. Lena got flowers when she made varsity cheer. Aaron got a new Xbox after his improved report card, which was just a C average. I got silence. Always silence. Birthdays came and went. Sometimes I'd get a card. One year I didn't. They said it slipped their mind because things were hectic. That was the year I turned 16. It wasn't always loud neglect. No screaming, no abuse, just consistent suffocating indifference. I'd come home from school and cook my own meals, wash my own clothes, take the bus everywhere. At some point, I realized I could probably vanish and they wouldn't notice for days. That realization didn't make me sad. It made me curious. So, I decided to test it. When I turned 18, I didn't throw a party, I didn't ask for cake. I didn't even mention it. I just waited. Nothing. No one said a word, not at breakfast, not at dinner, not a single happy birthday text. That night, I packed a bag and left. I had saved up some money from working at a bookstore. Not much, but enough to cover a couple of weeks of rent. I found a roommate through a mutual friend and took the first chance I got to leave. I didn't slam the door. Didn't leave a note. I just walked out. No one called that night. No one called the next day either. In fact, they didn't call at all for weeks. At first, I kept checking my phone. I wondered if maybe they were waiting for the right moment or if they thought I was staying at a friend's house. But the days stretched into weeks and the silence didn't change. They genuinely didn't notice. Somehow, I didn't feel broken by that. I felt free because if I could disappear from their lives that easily, then I was never really part of them in the first place. So, I made a decision. If they weren't going to check in on me, I wouldn't go back. The first few weeks on my own weren't glamorous, but they were mine. I moved in with a guy named Raphael, a friend of a friend who had an open room in his apartment just outside the city. The place wasn't much. The floors creaked. The ceiling had water stains. And the heater made this clicking sound like it was trying to cough itself awake. But it was quiet, not the kind of silence that made me feel invisible. The good kind. The kind where you can hear yourself think for once. I got a job waiting tables at a diner 2 blocks down. Morning shifts mostly, then evenings working as a line cook when someone called out. It was fast, greasy, chaotic, but I didn't mind. I liked being part of something where effort counted for something. No one there knew my family. No one expected anything from me except that I show up, work hard, and clean up after myself. It was the first time in my life where showing up as I was felt like enough. I enrolled in community college that fall. Paid for it myself. Financial aid covered part of it, and the rest came from tips, weekend shifts, and eating canned soup more often than I'd like to admit. It was exhausting, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. I kept to myself mostly, but I started making friends. People who didn't care about my family name or how many sports trophies my sister had. There was Mel, who ran the campus podcast, and Drew, who could fix anything with duct tape and a Red Bull. We bonded over late-night projects, missed deadlines, and too many vending machine snacks. I never mentioned my parents. Never said where I was from. Most people just assumed I was one of those kids who aged out of the system or got kicked out. I let them think that. It felt simpler than explaining the truth, that I had parents, and they simply forgot I existed. Now and then, I'd see something that pulled me back for a second, like a mother hugging her son at the bus stop, or a father helping his daughter carry groceries. And for a moment, I'd feel that old pain, like I'd been robbed of something everyone else got for free. But then I'd remember how long it had been since I left and how no one ever came looking. Not a single text, no email, not even a "Hey, where are you" from Aaron or Lena. They went on with life as if I had never been part of it. And that just confirmed what I already knew. I didn't leave them. They let me go. So, I kept going. By the time I turned 20, I'd finished my associate's degree and transferred to a 4-year university. I got a job doing basic tech support in the campus library and started building up a freelance portfolio on the side. Suddenly, the kid who packed a bag and disappeared became the guy everyone went to when they needed help getting back on their feet. Still, no one from my family ever reached out. They didn't know I'd started over. They didn't know I was building something real. And they definitely didn't know that the quiet kid they ignored was slowly learning how to stand tall without needing anyone's permission. 2 years. That's how long it had been since I walked out. No holidays, no birthdays, not a single message. And then one night, out of nowhere, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in ages. Dad Mobile. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, watching it buzz in my hand like it had the right to ask for space in my life. When it stopped, I thought that was it. Maybe a pocket dial, maybe a wrong number. But then came the voicemail. Hey, it's me. Dad. We were just wondering how you've been. You haven't been around in a while. Mom's been asking. Anyway, call us back. All right. The message was short, stiff, like someone trying to remember lines from a script they barely glanced at. I didn't call back because something about it felt off. Not concerned, not emotional, just a vague attempt at sounding like they cared without ever acknowledging what they'd done. No apology, no mention of forgetting my birthday. No sorry we didn't reach out. Just this casual tone like I'd been the one who disappeared without warning. For the first time in a long time, I felt angry. Not explosive, yelling into a pillow kind of angry, something deeper, a slow boil. They hadn't even realized I left until now. I wanted to believe they cared. I did. That maybe they'd finally noticed I was gone. But deep down, it felt like something else entirely. Guilt, maybe. Or more likely, they needed something. So, I waited. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a text from Lena. Hey, Dad's been trying to get in touch. You should call him. It's important. No details, no context, just another nudge from the sibling who used to treat me like furniture. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through her profile. All smiles and matching outfits, holiday photos with Aaron and my parents, everyone looking picture perfect, like I never existed. And yet now they were acting like I owed them an explanation for being absent. That's the thing that got me. I didn't vanish. I didn't block them. They just didn't notice until it became inconvenient to keep ignoring me. Part of me wanted to scream, to send a long message breaking down every moment they forgot me, every time I sat through a family dinner in silence while they laughed at each other's inside jokes. But I didn't because I'd built a life where I no longer had to explain myself. If they wanted to find me, they had every opportunity. If they wanted to understand why I left, all they had to do was look in the mirror. So, when I saw another text from my dad 2 days later, this time with a photo attached, some blurry image of the house, probably meant to stir nostalgia, I deleted it without opening it. Whatever they were trying to fix, they were too late. I wasn't lost. I just stopped waiting to be found. It took me a week to respond, not because I needed time to think. I already knew where I stood. But part of me wanted to see how far they'd go, how many calls, how many texts, how many vague we just wanted to talk messages it would take before they said the thing that mattered. None of them ever did. Still, I agreed to meet my dad. One afternoon, I sent a short text. I can meet you this Friday, 1 hour neutral place. We picked a cafe in the middle of town. Public, quiet, no chance for raised voices or sudden emotional outbursts. I wore a hoodie and kept my earbuds in until the moment I saw him walk in. He looked older than I remembered. Tired, like someone who'd aged more in 2 years than he had in the 10 before that. I stayed seated. Let him approach me. He hesitated for half a second when he saw me. Like he wasn't sure if he should smile or apologize. He chose to smile. Hey, Derek, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. You look good. I nodded. Didn't say anything, just waited. He ordered coffee. I didn't. So, he started, clearing his throat. It's been a while. I kept my expression neutral. He wanted a reunion. I was there for answers. We were surprised when you left. You didn't say anything. That was the first thing that made me blink. Surprised? I left without a word, and no one noticed for 2 years. He must have seen something shift in my face because he paused. Then he added, we thought you were just staying at a friend's house. Then the months passed and it just got harder to reach out. Was that their excuse? That they weren't sure where I was, so they chose not to try? He went on about how the house hadn't felt the same. How Lena got busy. How Aaron missed me, even if he didn't know how to say it. He listed off these shallow fragments of memory like they proved something, but the thing that struck me was what he never said. No apology, no acknowledgement of the years I spent being ignored. No recognition of how painful it was to realize that I could disappear from their lives and they just kept eating dinner like nothing had changed. So I asked, why now? That caught him off guard. What do you mean? Why reach out after all this time? What changed? He hesitated, then finally said it. Your grandmother passed. The family's been strained. We're trying to reconnect. There it was. Not about me. Not about realizing they'd hurt me. Just the fallout of another family issue, and now they needed the kid they forgot to glue things back together. I stood up. "I'm sorry about Grandma," I said. "But I'm not the one you call when things fall apart. Not anymore." He looked like he wanted to protest, maybe say something noble or dramatic, but I was already putting on my jacket. "You didn't check in when I left," I continued. "You didn't even ask if I was okay. So, no, I'm not here for closure. I'm here to make it clear that I moved on." I walked out without waiting for a response. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to hurt him. I just didn't need his validation anymore. The next day, he called again. I let it ring. He followed it up with a text. "We should have handled things differently. Your mom wants to see you, too." It wasn't a surprise. I knew this was coming. The moment I walked away from that cafe, I could already see the pattern forming. They weren't reaching out because they understood. They were reaching out because they were losing control. Before, I was just convenient, easy to ignore, easier to assume I'd always be around when it suited them. Now that I'd set a boundary, they were scrambling to figure out how to get me back into the role I used to play. I didn't respond. Not immediately. I sat with it for a day. Thought about everything I could say about the birthdays they missed, the conversations that never happened. The way the silence in that house used to feel like punishment I didn't deserve. But then I realized something important. They still hadn't apologized. Not once, not directly, not genuinely, just vague suggestions that things had been hard or complicated, and now they were trying to patch it over with more of the same. An invitation to return like the last few years didn't happen. So I wrote one message, just one. "I hope you and Mom are well. I've created a life I'm proud of. I'm not interested in reopening old wounds. Please respect that." I hit send and turned off my phone for the weekend. There was power in that silence. Not the kind I used to feel at home. Not the isolating, heavy kind. This was different. This silence came with peace, a quiet apartment. My own space. A playlist in the background. Dinner I cooked for myself. No yelling. No guilt, just calm. I spent that weekend working on a freelance project. One of my former professors had connected me with a nonprofit that needed help building out its donor dashboard. It was meaningful work, the kind that reminded me that I was building something that mattered. And it reminded me too that I was enough. Not because of what I'd achieved, but because I finally stopped begging to be seen by people who never wanted to look. That following week, I got one more message from Lena. "Dad's hurt. You didn't have to be so cold." It was almost laughable. Cold? I'd spent 2 decades giving that family every chance to notice me. I bent over backward to be the one who didn't need anything, who helped, who never complained. They called that love. But it was just convenience. When I stopped making their lives easier, suddenly I was cold. I didn't reply to her either. Not because I wanted to burn bridges, but because I finally understood that I wasn't the one who lit the match. All I did was step away from the fire. And that choice, it didn't make me heartless. It made me whole. Weeks passed. The call stopped. No more texts from my dad, no voicemails, no cryptic messages from Lena about how the family was trying to heal. They gave up trying to pull me back in. Or maybe they just shifted their focus. Either way, the silence returned. But this time, it didn't feel like neglect. It felt like relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for someone to remember I existed. I wasn't stuck in that old loop, trying to earn a place in a house that only valued me when it was convenient. I was just living. I had a stable job, a place I could afford, a circle of friends who checked in without needing a reason. My life was small, but it was steady. That steadiness was something I'd never experienced before. Not at home. Back then, everything had strings attached. If they cooked dinner, it came with guilt. If they offered a ride, they expected a favor later. Every nice gesture felt like a trap. Now, I had the freedom to give and receive without debt hanging in the air. I didn't talk about my family much. When people asked, I kept it simple. We don't talk. Most people didn't pry and I didn't offer more than that. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was finally done explaining myself. They still didn't understand what they did. I doubt they ever will, and I've stopped waiting for that realization. I've stopped hoping for a moment when they show up at my door and say, "We finally see you. We were wrong." That moment isn't coming, and I don't need it either. Healing didn't come from a confrontation or a perfect conversation. It came from choosing every day to invest in a future that didn't rely on their validation. It came from knowing that just because someone shares your last name doesn't mean they see your worth. I found mine elsewhere. In friendships that felt like family, in mentors who believed in me without needing a reason. In late night talks and shared meals and showing up for people who didn't see me as a backup plan. Some days I still wonder what it would have felt like to grow up with that kind of love. But then I remind myself I'm not defined by what I didn't get. I'm shaped by what I built anyway, and I built this life. Not because they pushed me forward, but because they didn't hold me back. That, in the end, is what gave me everything. Sometimes people ask if I ever think about going back. Not physically, more like emotionally. Rebuilding the connection, giving them another chance, trying one more time to find something in them that never seemed to be there when I needed it. And I get why they ask. The world teaches us that family is everything. That blood means forgiveness. No matter what, you're supposed to find your way back. But what if back means going somewhere that never felt like home? What if going back means shrinking again? Swallowing silence? Sitting at a dinner table full of people who ask surface questions and pretend the years in between never happened. I've thought about it a lot. And the truth is, I don't hate them. Not even close. Holding on to hate requires a lot of effort. It sits heavy in your heart, slowly draining your serenity and stealing your tranquility. It constantly craves your focus and energy. By now, I've already poured far too much of myself into that family, and I'm done feeding it anymore. What I experience these days is entirely different. It's a sense of detachment, neither icy indifference nor lingering bitterness, but a profound, crystal clear awareness that the person I've become simply doesn't fit into the narrative they continue to live by. This version of me, forged through countless sleepless nights filled with uncertainty, who constructed an entire existence from scratch, who discovered an inner resilience I never knew I had, has no place in the story they tell themselves. In the past, I genuinely believed that forgiveness was the only path to progress. I thought I needed their acknowledgement or some form of reconciliation to truly move on. But I've come to realize that closure isn't always a prerequisite for healing. Often, true recovery begins when you decide to stop justifying your choices over and over again. It grows from refusing to pursue an apology that may never arrive, not out of spite or unresolved anger, but from the deep recognition that your personal development and emotional well-being no longer hinge on whether they ever feel remorse or understand their role. Back then, being overlooked and rendered invisible wasn't something I selected or deserved, it was imposed on me without my consent. Yet today, I'm actively choosing visibility, but only according to my own rules and boundaries. I seek it in environments that feel secure and nurturing, surrounded by individuals who value me without requiring the full backstory of my suffering as proof or context for their affection and support. I've carefully built a life that brings me genuine joy and fulfillment. It's far from flawless, there are still challenges and imperfections woven throughout. It lacks the dramatic, cinematic ending you might see in movies, no tearful family reconciliation under falling snow or heartfelt confessions that tie everything neatly together. But what it has is authenticity. It's serene and steady, rooted in relationships with people who genuinely choose to be present, who appear in my life consistently without needing prompts or obligations. Occasionally, a message will pop up from someone connected to my old life, a distant cousin checking in, a former neighbor sending holiday greetings, or one of those generic hope you're doing okay notes that carry little weight. I don't brush them off or delete them unread. When the mood strikes me, I respond politely and warmly. I maintain kindness in those interactions because that's who I am now. Yet none of it tugs me backward into their gravitational pull. I've stepped out of that old orbit entirely, no longer revolving around their expectations or silences. Instead, I'm firmly planted in my own space, balanced, centered, and truly liberated. It's possible they'll never truly see me for who I am, never grasp the depth of what happened or why I left. They might forever hold on to the convenient belief that I simply abandoned them without reason or provocation. And honestly, that's acceptable to me now, because I hold the full truth in my heart. My departure wasn't motivated by a desire to inflict pain on anyone. It was born from a quiet but firm conviction that I merit more than a lifetime of being overlooked and erased. In the end, I discovered that more not through replacing them with a substitute family or chasing some idealized resolution. It emerged from a powerful, deliberate choice, to release the endless waiting for them to notice, to change, to care. From committing fully to living, truly, deeply living, with my eyes fixed forward, embracing each day without the shadow of regret or the weight of what was never given. This freedom didn't come from their actions or inactions, it came from within, from rebuilding on my own terms, and it has made all the difference.